again to the third day of world's largest FinTech Fest, Global FinTech Fest, organized by Payments Council of India and FinTech Convergence Council of Internet and Mobile Association of India and National Payments Corporation of India. This fest is presented by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India and Reserve Bank of India, and supported by Niti Aayog, Startup India and Invest India. This second edition of the summit is the theme FinTech, Empowering a Global Digital Economy, will provide an in-depth understanding of the latest business, policy, investment and technology developments within the FinTech landscape globally. Supported by Central Bank of Kenya, institutional partners, Reserve Bank of Innovation Hub, the World Bank and UNCDF. We thank you so much for joining the keynote session on a very interesting topic, that is future of banking. And with that, we are privileged to have Mr. Anup Bagchi, Executive Director, ICICI Bank, who has joined with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Bagchi, for joining, and a warm welcome to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And what a change it has been in the last few years. And such a large congregation of fintechs was not possible 3 years back. This format was not possible 3 years back. So we would have got collected in some conference in some place which is physical, where a lot of people would have come. So many people possible to join this forum. So we have really traversed a path thanks to pandemic. There are many positive things that has happened, notwithstanding the colossal impact that it had on lives and in general ecosystem. So the topic today, I'm delighted to share my thoughts with you on the future of banking.
Just give us a moment, he's joining back. Just allow us a couple of minutes, and Mr. Bagchi will join us. So, yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is banking? So I think we have to first define what is banking. Banking, if you go back in history, was about taking deposits and lending. And within banking, one of the most important thing where bank had really a monopoly or license was the payment system of the country. Particularly in our country, it was the payment system of the country. Now, cut back to today, who all do lending? Anybody can do lending. There are NBFCs who can do lending. There are other people who can do lending, but NBFCs can do lending. And so banks, are they only for lending? They are not for lending. Then what are they for? Are they for deposit taking, wholesale deposit taking? But then if capital markets develops very deeply, then one can have sources of liability which may not be retail deposit taking. And for some time, if it is not very deep, of course, there is volatility on liabilities. But if it really becomes very deep, that can become a constant source of finance. And to that extent, liability also for banks, well, yes and no. But retail deposits are less volatile and they are steadier and they come at relatively lower cost. But then wholesale deposit rates also, once in a while, they also come at a retail plus cost. Then what is it? Is it about payments? But then there are other people who are also in a way getting a peek into the payments flow. So there are other players who are getting into payment. So then if it is getting disaggregated, then what is the future of banking is the main question. The big difference between, I would say, banking and other entities that develop, which fulfill these functions, which is lending, deposits, and payment systems. If it gets disaggregated, banks perhaps are the only 3-in-1 product where all the three are get congregated, and in a sense has a good place by which if you get a consumer from any source, you can get it from retail deposits, you can get it from payments, you can get it from any place. You actually are not a monoline. You are a marketplace where you can sell and offer many products to the customer. The other thing that happens is because it's a licensed entity, in general, the trust levels are higher. One doesn't have to work that hard or that long to develop trust level, because trust is implicit in banking and because it is very, very well regulated. Now, what are the other overheads of banking? The other overheads of banking would be PSL. So, priority sector lending could be one overheads of the banking, because for all the assets that you generate, we have to keep priority sector lending. Then you have CRR, SLR on the liability side, which also can be seen as a overheads of banking because you have demand deposits and deposits can be taken away. Now, in the new age, if you look at last 15-20 years, the way banks have also developed as a marketplace, almost as Amazon of financial services, you will also see other third-party products getting added. So you have cross-selling of mutual funds, other kinds of funds, insurances. So other kind of services have also started to come in now. So banks, are they the traditional bank that their job is only to borrow and pick up retail deposits and lend? I would say that no, that is not the future of banking, and it is morphing very, 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 very quickly. Why it is morphing so quickly? For one, lot of data that banks had was proprietary. It was not available to other people. Number one. Number two, they had lots of customers, and so what do you do with the customers? There are multiple ways of adding value to the customers, but banks would be only doing lending. Now the future of lending really is picking up problems that the customers have. So there is a personal banking side and there is a business banking side. On the business banking side, I would put it in four buckets. One bucket I'll put as liabilities as a bucket, which is deposit taking. I'll put assets or lending as another bucket, where you lend. Then you have investments, because all the surpluses that are generated out of the surplus generated in business banking, which is profits, cash flows, or surplus cash flows at an individual balance sheet level, that goes into investments. Then you have other transaction services that one gives, which is at the minimum payment or collection solutions or trade solutions and all of it. And then overlaying that, you will have insurance. I'm saying investments as a separate leg, but insurance. Now the beauty of this is that in the last 5 years particularly, there has been a lot of work on the digital infrastructure, and the digital infrastructure that is available, that coupled with the fact that banks have a lot of data internally, that plus they have a distribution already. So there is a product, there is a customer segment, and there is a distribution. So there is a product, customer segment, distribution fit that the future of banking has to evolve. So this is one area where banks have to evolve. Now the question that banks have to ask themselves is, why are fintechs? And if you go through the fantastic lineup of this event itself, one will see that there is a very wide spectrum of fintechs, and there is a lot of depth of fintechs. So they are large, they're becoming larger, but there is a wide variety of problems that are getting solved. The question is that why did banks not solve this problem themselves? Because they could theoretically solve this problem. I would say that banks didn't solve this problem earlier because of two things. One is they always thought that demand is just there and it's a supply side problem that has to be solved. And so bank customers will reach out to you, and customers, when they and customer didn't have that many of choices. So now customers have choices. Second is that they didn't focus on many problems that the consumers had, both on the business banking side as well as on the personal banking side. So hunting for problems to solve has to now become the culture of banks, good banks. Yeah, what are the problems? Which basically mean nearer to the customers, understanding what problems can be solved and what problems can be solved at scale. And the good thing is, because the banking consumers generally take many products from the customers, one has a operating leverage that is inbuilt into the business model, and so one has to pick up the problem and one has to solve that problem. One can solve the problem on their own, or one can solve the problem by collaborating with a fintech. Now, the next question is that what is the interplay between fintech and banks? Because if banks can solve the problem, they will solve the problem. But what happens in banks, because there are multitude of work that is there, because it's not a monoline, it's a diverse set of things. Many problems escape their attention, and if problems escape their attention, the good thing that is happening is there will be willy-nilly some fintech could be solving that problem. Why those problems couldn't have been solved 10 years back, but now those problems can be solved, and there is a very focused attention towards solving that problem. Now, the next question that comes out of this, the corollary is that if they can solve the problem, will the customer shift naturally to the fintech? Now, what happens is that let's say I'm a consumer of many services, banking services or financial services. Forget banking services, many financial services. If let's say I require eight services I have to consume, of which 7 is getting given by banks properly, but 3 are not getting solved by the banks. 7 are getting reasonably solved by the bank. 3 are not getting solved by the bank. Now, these 3 are getting solved by some fintech or the other, and they really solve that problem. First of all, they have taken attention to that and they are solving that problem. Now, the real question is that are these three problems that are getting solved, is it really very high salience for the customer? First of all, is it really relevant, and whether it is high salience? Now, if they are low salience for the customer, but it is good to have, many customers might think that I will live with the 7. I may not move to taking this solution from fintech, because there is a cost of coordination when you get more service providers onboarded. So where is the opportunity for the bank? The opportunity of banks is that you take that fintech, embed it into your own banking services, and then you provide all the 10 to the consumer. So if you provide all the 10 and if the client is getting all the 10 from the bank, then they'll be very happy, because the cost of coordination is being taken by the banks. It is not being taken by the end consumer or by the end client. Now, what is in the problem? What are the 3 problems that are there to be attacked? The 3 problems that are generally there to be attacked is: A, is there a latent demand which is not getting solved by the banks for whatever reason? Either they are not imaginative enough, or they are imaginative but they are not able to execute because of their own internal architecture or even their internal culture architecture. There, the real issue is that latent demand. So the recent examples are all BNPL. BNPL, we feel is a different form factor, but it solves a very different problem. And so there is a latent demand for credit in a customer segment, which is not getting fully solved by the current form factors, like credit cards or EMI on credit cards or EMI on debit cards, etc. Second, it also gives a better consumer experience because of the data infrastructure. Sometimes banks, because of their own internal rigidity of IT architecture or cultural architecture, it may not be as flexible, it may not be as agile, it may not be as adaptable. So that is one. Second place where any banks can get attacked or anybody else can get attacked, if one is inefficient. So if there is a large OPEX or cost that is getting used up, a large cost that is getting used up to give a service, and that service is cost plus, naturally the service is delivered in a more expensive manner to somebody else. And if consumers don't have a choice, they have to live with cost plus, and that cost is an inefficient cost. So that is the other place where one can get attacked, that you cut the cost and then you can reduce the price, and then suddenly a new customer segment opens up, or the consumer can shift to the other service provider. The third part where banks can get attacked is: are there any abnormal profit pools that are there? Profit pools can be of 2 kinds. Either they are protected profit pools, they can get attacked if the protection goes away, so that then they can get attacked. Second, but there are positive profit pools also, because then if banks have created moat around that and it is very complex and it is very difficult to replicate, then naturally that profit pools cannot be cracked. So I would say that there are 3 areas where banks have to be very conscious of. One is latent demand of the consumers or the clients which are not getting met by the bank. What is the mitigant of that? The mitigant of that is be nearer to the consumer, be nearer to the client. You don't think of yourself as it things are given. Go and figure out that latent demand and then solve that problem either on your own or by collaboration with a fintech. Second one is OPEX. So OPEX, you can live with a high OPEX, inefficient OPEX if there are no choices. If choices come up on the horizon, one has to attack the OPEX. Why does OPEX remain high? OPEX remains high because you could have built up a process in a particular way using a particular infrastructure. Now, suddenly, if things are moved over a period of time where process can be completely reimagined because different tools are available and the infrastructure cost can be replicated at a lower cost or in a variable cost like in cloud, etc., then suddenly one will come to a situation where the the composition of the cost itself undergoes a very different shape, and thus if there are choices available to the client and if it is a cost plus thing, and assuming pricing is not an independent marketplace, then one can get attacked on the banking side. The cost of intermediation is another place where it can get attacked. Third place, as I said, abnormal profit pools. Abnormal profit pools, what happens is if they are abnormal profit pools, there are tendencies to cross substitute different businesses. So a high profit pool business cross subsidizes other profit pools, which might be inefficient. So it is now a combo of the second and the third: high OPEX, large profit pool. Large profit pool goes away, high OPEX remains. Then also banks can have a problem because they are not able to then respond well because they are not able to invest that much, in the infrastructure. But having said that, look at the positives of the bank. Banks generally have good capital. So when somebody says that they are investing over a lifetime $1 billion, banks like us, we investment or spend or whatever we call it $3 billion a year. So $1 billion is not such a large amount because in that $1 billion everything is counted, talent is counted, infrastructure is counted, everything. So we also, if we count everything, it will be $3 billion. So it is not really capital which is a differentiator. Then what is the differentiator then? The other differentiator is that do you have a different, when you're solving a problem, does it require a different kind of mindset or different kind of culture? I would say that at this point of time, culture is something that progressive banks must work on. And in the future of banking, I'd say culture. So it is future of banking. I'll say future of culture in banking organization. That really has to be worked on, not on the capital side, not on the fact that somebody can bleed for a longer period of time and then come out with a solution, because the kind of capital is different from fintech and kind of capital that is required for banking, because you can always generate money because you're profitable and you can reinvest part of it. So I don't think that's really a competitive disadvantage for the bank. Culture is something that has to be worked on. The culture, what is the culture? The culture has to be of adaptability, the culture has to be of agility, but you have to use the governance, the strong governance and trust of the bank and the customer base that you have, because one doesn't have to again reinvest cost of acquisition. And so one has to see the cost of acquisition of other players versus the cost of acquisition of the bank. So it is for the bank really to lose this game. This game is of incumbent. This game banks might lose because they are not imaginative enough. Banks might lose this game because they are not creating a culture which is adaptable and agile. And banks might lose if they forever keep subsidizing different parts of the business, easy protected profit pools, subsidizing a business which is getting attacked, but one is not adaptable and agile. And so one is not really working on that piece. So what is the banking of the future? Banking of the future is more and more and more closer to the customer, really understanding three parts, really understanding what is the latent demand and how do we solve for that, number one. Number two, be imaginative about how do I make my own clients more efficient, more effective, because banking and financial services, we are support system, we are not the main system. So there is a life that they live and we support that life. And so anybody who supports the life has to make the first order, the banking is second order, the first order more effective, more efficient, more imaginative in solving the problem. be adaptable and flexible, and look at all the things which are available to make your operations very, 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 very agile and adaptable at a low OPEX. So decongestion of processes, cutting costs is important, and not parking costs at different places by cross subsidizing the profit pool. And third, on the profit pool, sometimes, and this is true of all organizations, one defends the current profit pool even though it might be slipping away. Proactively, one has to ensure that one doesn't defend the profit pool but to create newer and newer lines of profit pool, so that there is no great need of defending the only profit pool that one has. So the future of banking is really an unbundled future, because what is the big difference between banking of yesterday and banking of tomorrow? It is moving from bundling to unbundling. The moment you unbundle, there are many people from the manufacturing side here who will know that if you unbundle, you have to cost every element well, and you have to transfer price every element well. You cannot cross subsidize each one with the other. And so bankers have to start to think in a way in which every element is decoupled. And so think of banking as a service. Think of banking as a service which is costed. But because banks are high OPEX and low variable cost, allocation of cost can sometimes distort the incentives of what's happening. So internally, a good method of costing, a good method of knowing where value is, and putting it with the demand drivers and demand pockets of services. But from the supply side, make sure that the movement from supply to the demand is being done at the lowest cost. The whole architecture is agile and adaptable, and it is flexible, so that if some other need comes in, we are able to do it. From the fintech, look at them as collaborators, look at them as adding on to the products and services that you're already giving. And so if you already have 7, add on 3 and reduce the coordination cost of your client so that they deal only through you. Because the 3 going to 10 is also a very difficult task for the fintech. They don't have scale and they don't have unlimited capital to burn, which is why you will see that in fintech also, while India is now becoming a land of unicorns, which is such a wonderful thing to have. Because the good thing about unicorn is that capital can come in, they can focus on problems, and if they solve a problem, as banks we can append those problems. Now, of course, there are also issues around banking that will come up, and it is only fair to raise some of these issues. Who owns the customer? Who owns the customer will be a battle that will get fought today or tomorrow. The battle between who owns the data of the customer, I think, is relatively solved. I think generally India jurisdiction is coming to a conclusion that data is owned by the customer, which is why when you have accounts aggregator kind of infrastructure getting built up, it is getting built up on that customers have the data belongs to the customer. There should be a good consent mechanism, and then you have FIUs, FIPs, and then everybody can use it, and things can become frictionless, and the delivery to the end customer is better and faster. Now, what kind of people can actually use those infrastructure? What kind of banks can use the infrastructure? What kind of fintechs can use the infrastructure? I think the way banks can use the infrastructure is that most banks have low market share, except few banks who will be at, I think 1 or 2 banks only are at double-digit infrastructure market share. Most of them are small. So actually, there's more to get than to give. And all banks actually are fintech plus plus. Now the only thing is, because they have consumers, they understand processes, they understand complexity. Because as you become big, there are always governance issues which come. There are always governance overheads which come, because once you become big, you cannot fail. So things which were okay when you are a child are not okay when you are a grown up. And so if it is not okay when you are grown up, so one has to behave. So one will get regulated. Once get regulated, one has to put more robust processes. They have to put more robust policies. They have to have more customer protection. All that adds up to cost little bit. But what it gives in return is high trust. And so banks, naturally, they have already traversed that path. Many other organizations have not traversed that path. They are traversing through that path. So certainly there is, but all of them will traverse the path, because once you start start dipping into customers' money and starts getting deposits, or even when you are lending, there will be a concept of responsible lending will come. We saw fintech lending, some episodes where indiscriminate lending was done. And so, over a period of time, as regulations develop, there will be regulations on affordability of lending. There will be regulations of responsible lending, just the way there is now regulations around investments. So, responsible investments, what kind of products can you offer, what kind of customer protection you have, what kind of capital protection you have, and what kind of capital you have to absorb the shocks that can come from the volatility of the businesses that keep coming. So I feel overall, in conclusion, I think it's a fantastic time to live. I think it's very exciting. As ICICI Bank, we really think like a fintech, but we have an advantage of large customer base. We have an advantage of very robust processes, high trust, large customer base, and very solid governance across data, across trust, across talent. And so for us, we are looking forward with great excitement. I think the big thing that has happened in the last 5 years is what you can imagine, now you can execute. 5 years back, you could imagine, but you couldn't execute because the overall ecosystem was not there. I will end by saying that, many people can talk about many things, but really, when we solve a problem or when a entity exists, think of it as a deposit locker which can be opened by multiple keys, at least two keys. So bank puts a key and then the customer puts a key. Only through two keys does the bank locker opens. Similarly, when this economy is getting opened up, it is getting opened up not because just one person is putting a fight, because there are multiple keys which are opening it up. So they are digital infrastructure. So Aadhaar is one key which has opened up things. UPI is another thing which has opened up key. Other kinds of regulations are coming which are opening keys. Other kinds of, for example, satellite imagery which will be opening up keys. So there are different capabilities that are getting opened which open keys. Now, to solve a problem, picking up the multiple keys and opening it up for the customer is really the future of banking. Unbundling is the future of banking. But it is with great excitement that we have to see, because Indian banks are still very, very small in the context of globe. They are required because there is trust. They are required because they have multiple services to offer to the customer. And really, it is the game of the incumbent. And, one must play to win, and one must play to add value to the customer. And if you add value to the customers don't go anywhere because they know that they are going to get it. So 3 questions that has to be asked of the client internally. One is, do customers know what you have to offer? What is the unique and relevant thing you have to offer? Second, why will the customer ever come to you? That's the question that banks and everybody has to ask ourselves. And third question, very important, people agenda. Why will good talent work with you? Because a good talent, so human capital plus financial capital, they create solutions. But to create solutions, you have to understand customers. So customer is at the focal point. And with this satellites, I think the game is going to be very, 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 very exciting for times to come. So thanks very much for this opportunity. I thought I'll just share some of my thoughts, and wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, of course, it was a very insightful session that we just had, but I think it was also very motivating, because the kind of questions that you were asking, and then answers also, solutions that you were giving, and the point that you mentioned about that there was a time 5 years ago where it was only about imagination, and today we have so much of access that we can execute those imaginations and put them into action. And the first thing that you started the presentation with was that because of the pandemic, the positive side of everything, that now we can traverse to far off distances, sit here and sort of connect globally. So I think that is the positive side. So thank you very much on that positive note. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.